are. We're on chapter 3, text 30. Chapter 3, text 30. Thus far in the third chapter, I don't know, what do we got? We got 1, 2, maybe 3.5 to 4.5 teachings that have been covered. So the chapter starts out and Arjuna is confused because Krishna taught both Sankhya and yoga in the second chapter. Sankhya again is what? Hitan. No. What is Sankhya? Huh? Renunciation. That's how it's interpreted. What'd you say? Hey, don't walk through again.
Intellectual study. Like studying literature.
Study. Okay, sure. Sankhya means to enumerate. What does Sankhya mean in the context of the Gita? Sankhya means simply you are not this body. It's a basic differentiation between spirit and matter. Well, we spent weeks on this, guys. I don't know why you can't do it. Sankhya in the Gita is you're not the body. It's the first teaching of the Gita. It's a differentiation between spirit and matter. Now, the word Sankhya literally means to enumerate, so it refers to a group of people who study. It's true. And then that study generally leads to some kind of renunciation. So your answers aren't wrong, but they're definitely not correct. What is Sankhya hidden? What is Sankhya hidden? I'm talking to you. I'm looking at you. I'm talking. No, hidden.
Yeah.
What is Sankhya?
It's Sankhya, you're not the body.
Okay. For the rest of your lives, you guys should remember this. It's a simple word, Sankhya. It has a simple meaning in the Gita. You all know the meaning. Now you have a label for the term that refers to that teaching. There should be no need for further discussion. Okay. There's another word in addition to Sankhya. What was the other word? I said there was 2 words. What are they? Sankhya and yoga. What is yoga? Open. Anybody can answer. In the context of the Gita, what is yoga? Quickly, come on.
Work, activity.
Yoga means work activity. So if I go and, I don't know, work at a bar, and that's my job, that's yoga. It's a terrible answer. What is yoga? Yes. Yoga is doing your duty. Yoga is doing your duty. So Sankhya and yoga are taught in the second chapter of the Gita. Sankhya is that you're not the body, and yoga is to do your duty. And you combine those 2 things together. The Sankhya informs the yoga, and that yoga becomes known as Buddhi Yoga, like the word Buddha, to be enlightened. So it's an enlightened yoga. So you're doing your duty, but you're doing it with the knowledge that you're not your body, and therefore you're doing your duty, but you are not. There you go, you're not attached to the result. It's really simple. This is basic. We should never have to go over this again. Sankhya Yoga. They fit together like a hand and a glove. Sankhya is the theory, yoga is the practice. Sankhya is the hypothesis, yoga is the experiment. Sankhya is discursive, yoga is pragmatic. One of them is an idea, a notion, cognitive. The other one is behavioral, it's active. One of them you do with your mind, the other one you do with your body. It's really, really simple. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. It's the beginning teaching of the Gita. It's called Sankhya Yoga. Everybody should know it. It's something you memorize, like your multiplication tables. It should have that much time it should take to be able to define this. What is Sankhya? Dhyana. There you go. We're not the body. And if you're going to speak more generally, you're not the body is an instance of a more general principle. And a more general principle is there's a differentiation between. Then you didn't know it because you should be able. I gave it to you. What is it? Spirit and matter. Body is an instance of matter. Soul is an instance of spirit. You are not the body is a differentiation between spirit and matter. If you can just say you're not the body, but you can't make that larger macrocosmic principle, you haven't understood the subject. It's like knowing 2 plus 2 equals 4, but not actually knowing that 2 apples, and you have 2 more apples, makes 4 apples. You don't actually know the concept. You just memorize the words, but they have no cognition behind them. You guys got to drill this stuff. It's simple. It's not really that complicated. And we spent a lot of time going over it. You should own this now. It should be yours. What is Sankhya? Again, you're not the body. That's an instance of a more general macrocosmic principle, which is that there is a difference between... Yeah, you just said it. You're not the body. Body and soul, or a larger concept of body and soul is spirit and matter. You're shutting down. You're not able to follow, which is a bummer because I'm teaching some really good wisdom and it's not that complicated. And so if you can get over your emotional self and your ego and just listen, you can learn a ton in a very short period of time. And when I went nice, you didn't learn it over weeks and months. So now I'm trying to drill it into you guys. What is Sankhya? And what is that an instance of?
It's the difference between spirit and matter.
It's that easy. It's 2 sentences. Did you guys follow this? Juanita, did you follow this? What's Sankhya?
Sankhya is we're not the body.
Okay, and that's an instance of a larger principle, which is that there's a difference between... Bingo. It's perfect. Do you guys all know what Sankhya is? It's easy. You guys should know it. Huh?
I'm not sure if I understand.
You get it, right? Good. Pay attention. You're not stupid. You're just not focused. Your emotion, your ego, whatever gets in the way and you're not listening carefully. I'm teaching you guys like really simple stuff. I'm dumbing it down. I'm making it easy. Now, Sankhya informs another word. What's the other word that goes with Sankhya like a hand in a glove?
Yoga.
Boom. Perfect. Yoga in general is the idea of...
Doing your duty.
Boom. But then when it gets informed by the Sankhya, that you're not the body, it becomes doing your duty but not being attached to...
The outcome.
There you go. The outcome, the fruit, the result. It doesn't matter what word you use. If you've got the concept, you've got it. And that yoga that is informed by Sankhya, it can either be called yoga or it can be called yoga with an adjective modifying it, and it's a compound. It's called, Hitan? Buddhi yoga, just like Buddha. It's enlightened yoga. You're doing your duty, but you're not attached to the result because you've been enlightened by the idea that you're not the body. You guys follow this? Krishna explained that to Arjuna in the 2nd chapter. And Arjuna starts the 3rd chapter by saying, first you're telling me you're not the body, then you're telling me to do my duty. Tadekam va, just tell me one thing. Because I'm bewildered. I'm bewildered by your equivocal instructions. You're speaking in a confusing way, and I'm bewildered. So therefore, please just tell me decisively what's going to be the best for me. Give me one teaching. Arjuna, in a sense, froze up just like you did. And even though Krishna made perfect sense in the 2nd chapter of the Gita, somehow or other, Arjuna, after hearing everything Krishna taught, which was totally reasonable, totally logical, totally systematically presented, Arjuna, at the beginning of the 3rd chapter, was a complete buffoon. What would be the benefit of Arjuna being a buffoon in the beginning of the 3rd chapter? What's the benefit of that? What's the benefit of Arjuna lacking basic comprehension, Howard?
We get to observe and work through those issues.
There you go. We get a chance for Krishna to have another bite from the apple. We get another chance to hear the teachings again. And those teachings, when they're given again in the 3rd chapter, are given not just a mere repetition, but it's a repetition like a song that moves forward. Just like the chorus of a song develops through the course of a song. Just like a speech may hit similar themes, but then the speech develops over time, and you're hitting those same themes, but in a richer way. Just like a piece of literature will return to light motifs or repeated themes, but those themes will be developed throughout the piece of literature. So you're not just reading the same page over and over again. This happens in music. You have a refrain you go back to, but every time you go back to the refrain, you build on it and it gets stronger. The classic example I give, usually to illustrate this point, is Beethoven's Fifth, which is 4 notes. Dun, 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 dun. Then it goes lower. Dun, 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 dun. Then it goes higher. Dun, 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 dun. Then it also modulates not only the instruments, not only the volume, not only the tempo. Everything gets dun, 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 dun. You follow? Same 4 notes. In the same order. The same structure. But it's going up and down. And it makes a song. And it makes a powerful song because of the repetition. Because of the development of those 4, that note structure. It's a great piece of music. So helixes are circles that move forward. The circle that moves forward. And so Krishna has a chance to move forward with his teaching. Not only does he go over the same basic teaching multiple times in the Gita to give us a refresher course, but he deepens them every time so we get more information. That should have taken me 15 seconds, maybe a minute. Instead, it took me 10 minutes because you guys haven't learned your multiplication tables, which means I have to teach you guys multiplication tables every single time we start, which I shouldn't have to do. I should only go, what's 3 plus times 3, and you say 9. Or what's 12 times 11, you say 132. You should just know it. It should be that easy. Then we can get through this in a very, very short period of time. Instead of it being incredibly tedious for me as a teacher, discouraging for me, frustrating for me as a teacher, and also a waste of your time because you are capable of better focus than this. Intelligence, people like to think of intelligence as something you have or you don't have. The truth is intelligence is almost tantamount to or equivalent to focus. And if you focus really intensely, give her a book, would you? Just give her one of these. Take it back there for me. Good to see you, Flo. Just sit down, grab a cushion, sit down anywhere. If you focus, all of a sudden you become way more intelligent. Focus is everything. Because you might be a fool and ask a dumb question, but if you're focused, when you ask a dumb question, you get an answer, you know the answer. Pretty soon you've asked enough dumb questions where you're not dumb anymore because you got the answers to enough questions that you've held on to because you're focused, and you're starting to get brilliant. We have to understand what happened in the 2nd chapter to appreciate the 3rd chapter, which is all I wanted to do to get us to where we are today. The 3rd chapter starts off with Arjuna being vexed. He says, tell me one thing. I'm bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Just tell me one thing that's for the best for me. And so Krishna makes his teaching even simpler. Krishna says, you can't even maintain your body without doing something. So instead of pretending that you're not doing anything, while your mind wanders, you become a hypocrite, a mithyachari. Instead of doing that, just go ahead and do your duty, regulate your senses, and, but there's no way that just simply by doing nothing, you're going to become free from your bondage to this world. You're in this world, you have to do something. You can't just do nothing. You can't just sit and do nothing and end your bondage to this world. You have to actually move in this world. And so Krishna simplifies his teaching. It's much simpler. Now instead of be enlightened and do your duty without being attached, it's just do your duty even if you're a little attached. You follow? Then Krishna reiterates the idea of being unattached to your duty. And he says that yagyarta karmano anyacha lokoyam karma bandhana. Other than work for the purpose of yajna, all work in this world binds you. He's now introduced a new term. What's the term he just introduced? You. Are you not listening? You spaced out, right? Why? Where did you get the idea that spacing out was a good protocol for this class? What's the new word that just got introduced? Yajna. See how he's developing his teaching? He introduced a new word. Now that word has to be defined. Now yajna is ubiquitous in Vedic literatures. It's a very, very standard term in Sanskrit. It means ritual. It means sacrifice. And so yajna was the old Vedic rite where you would the rain would come, the rain would grow grass, The cows would eat the grass. The cows would make milk, which you can't eat grass, but the cows make milk, which you can drink. You take the essence of milk, which is cream. You take the essence of cream, which is butter. You take the essence of butter, which is ghee. And now you have water as ghee that you offer into the fire, which represents the sun. And you offer it with mantra, which is the air. And now you're offering back to the Creator who gave you this world in reciprocity. You're offering back the sun, the water, and the air. And so you're reciprocating with photosynthesis, with the water cycle, and with the oxygen exchange. These three core elements of our existence in this world. And now you're reciprocating and you're giving them back. And that was the old Vedic yajna, where you would build a fire and you would offer ghee into the fire along with mantra. And that was the yajna. And so Krishna explains, when you're working in this world, you get attached unless you do yajna. And he explains that the Creator, and this is going back to the Rig Veda in the Purusha Sukta, which is that the Lord created the world and then gave us the ability to give back. And that was the final gift to all of us, was the ability to give back. And so this is like old Vedic rites. And in fact, Krishna quotes the old Vedic rites and says that it was the dawn of creation, the Prajapati. He explained that this is your Ishtakama Duk, this is your wish-fulfilling cow that's going to give you everything you want. But you have to receive and you also have to give back. And there's a reciprocity, which is called Rita in the old Veda, which eventually became the concept of Dharma. Rita predates Dharma. It's the old Vedic Sanskrit term used in the original Samhitas to refer to our relationship with the divine. That eventually became Dharma. And so Rita was replaced at some point in the history of the evolution of the Sanskrit language by the concept of Dharma. So Krishna points out now that even if you're not able to, listen to this very carefully, even if you're not able to do your duty without being attached to the result, like I told you in the second chapter, we're still not going to let you just do your duty, like I said at the beginning of the third chapter. We're going to evolve you through doing your duty and being attached, and by ritually giving something back, like tithing. You guys know what tithing is? Tithing is giving 1/10 of your income to the church. Tithe, from the same root as 10. It's giving 1/10 of your income to the church. So by giving regulated charity, by doing ritual, you are now forcing yourself to be detached from the results of your actions. It doesn't require a cognitive reframing. You can be a totally attached person, and if you just force yourself to give something back, now you're on the road to learning this rule of you're not the body and you should do your duty without being attached to the results. And now we have a therapeutic model. So Krishna introduced a new term. The new term was yajna, which now evolves the teaching and deepens it and makes the teaching more rich. And at the same time, he dumbed it down if you're not ready for it. And he gave you a therapeutic model by which you could go through some sort of process of auto-correction, some kind of therapeutic prophylactic model where you get purified. You're giving back, and by giving back, you eventually then become, what's the word? By giving back, you eventually become enlightened, or you become, starts with a D, detached. Because you didn't get the first time I said it. So now I made it simpler for you, an easier, no barrier to entry. You can just be attached to your duty. At no point does Krishna say don't do your duty. But now by giving something back in a regulated way, that giving back in a regulated way, which we normally think of as tithing or charity, had a word in Sanskrit. What's the word in Sanskrit for this ritual giving back? You in the back? There you go. Yajna. That's right. Y-A-J-N-A. Yajna. Kind of a little compound consonant there. Yajna. Yajna is another way to say it. Yajna, you skipped the J altogether. Yajna is probably the most proper way to say it. That's how they say it in South India. Yagya, North India, normally said North India, Yagya. And so there's different ways to pronounce it, but yes, you've got the exact idea. Correct. Yajna is a way to start to give back. And the result of giving back and forcing yourself to give back by giving regular charity, by tithing, is that even if you're not detached in the beginning like you're supposed to be, what will happen in due course of time, Juanita? You'll become, there you go. Then Krishna says you become detached, now you have no duty left in this world, but you'll still do your duty because you do it for the benefit of others. And while you're doing your duty, teach others and help them grow and help them be benefited. Like the Bodhisattva doesn't just become an arhat and disintegrate like in early Buddhism, but he stays in this world to help other people become enlightened. You, by doing your duty, even though you're already detached, set a good example for other people. And you shouldn't go too big because you might try to push them too far and they can't get there. So you should just gradually help them. So now the same gradual process Krishna just taught us, he's now telling you to teach that same gradual process to other people. Did you guys follow that? So now you're still in this world doing your duty, but now it's not to purify yourself because you've become released, but now it's to set a good example for other people. And in many ways, you're modeling Krishna's own example of the teaching he just gave by making it easy for people to enter into the subject matter. Did you guys follow this? All right. There's some more, like one more point, but I'm not going to do it because I want to move. We're 20 minutes in. What should have taken about 3 to 5 minutes. We're 20 minutes in. So I want to get into today's class. Krishna ultimately finishes up with Mayi Sarvani. This is text 30. Let's look at it together. Mayi Sarvani Karmani Sanyasya. Sanyasya. Sanyasya is as a verb here. It means renouncing, or sannyas means sun, ni, and us. It means to place something down properly. It doesn't necessarily mean throwing it away or renouncing. The same way we think of renunciation is like you throw it away, you just give it up altogether. Sannyas literally means to place something down properly. So it could also be used as a synonym for offering. Etymologically, it's a synonym for offering, although it's quite often used in Sanskrit to mean renunciation. Literally, the word means to relinquish, to give something back, to place it down where it's supposed to go. Sannyasya, you give back. Sarvani karmani, all your works. You give them back. Mayi. Mayi means to me. This is an instance of the theism that will gradually evolve throughout the chapters of the Gita, being foreshadowed or introduced early on in the text when we're in more of a pre-theistic phase of the Gita, where we're talking about teachings which would largely be congruent with Buddhism or any sort of spiritual path of renunciation, a Stoic path or something like that, that does not require a deity. Ultimately, the Gita evolves through a logical progression, systematically, to theism. But what Krishna does is he peppers a little theism into the early portions of the text. And this, in fact, is one of those texts. Give back all your activities to me. Adhyatma cetasa, with your mind in divine consciousness. Adhyatma means in relationship to the spirit. Cetasa, with your mind being immersed in spirituality. Give all your karmas, give all your actions. Karma means action in Sanskrit, not reaction. Give all your actions back to me. Nirasi nirmama buddha, being free from possessiveness and desire. Yujasva vigata jvara. Shake out, with your fever having gone, fight. Fight. Now, what does fight mean here? When Krishna tells Arjuna to fight, what's he telling him? You. Okay? When Krishna tells Arjuna, you should fight, what is he telling Arjuna to literally do? Yeah, the Gita's happening on a battlefield. So the literal meaning of fight, see, a lot of times if he says fight, we would go for a metaphorical meaning, because it would be a metaphorical meaning for us, which would be do your duty but don't be attached to the result, and fight that battle, that hero's journey of doing your duty but not being attached. But given that the Gita was spoken on a battlefield, a literal interpretation works just fine. And so you have a kind of a double entendre, a double meaning you can get from this, where you could say it literally means get up and fight, shake off your fever of bewilderment, of not wanting to fight, and get up and pick up your bow and go fight. And for all of us, then, it has a more general meaning, a more generic meaning, which is fight our battle. And our battle is the battle of
eventually becoming renounced and giving up.
doing your duty, not being attached to the results, eventually renouncing things, giving them back to Krishna, etc., etc. Great.
Being free from lethargy, like in this fight. I get this was being free from lethargy.
Lethargy, yeah. Jwara means fever, lethargy, and any of them work, yes. So you should be free from the lethargy. And the lethargy in this instance for us, what's the lethargy for us? Being attached. You follow? Being lazy. Not wanting to do our duty, or wanting to do somebody else's duty, or wanting to renounce our duty prematurely, or being complacent, or being attached to the fruits. These are all ways in which we're feverish. And so Arjuna needs to shake off. He was just having a panic attack. So he needs to shake off his panic attack and pick up the bow and go to battle. And we need to shake off our attachment, and we need to pick up the pick up the cross, like Jesus said, and walk the saintly path. Okay. Let's keep going. Therefore, O Arjuna, surrendering all your works unto me. This is page 167 in my book, text 30, chapter 3, in case you don't know where to look. Surrendering all your works to me with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims of proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. There you go. Ye me matam idam nityam anutishtanti manava. A person who is situated in following always this instruction of mine. Me matam means my consideration, my thought. This, idam, me matam, this, my thought. Nityam anutishtanti. You should always follow this. Manava, a person. Manava is where you get the word man from in English. A man, a person, should always follow this path. One who does that amongst men. Shradanvato, anasuyanta, who is filled with faith and is free from critiquing and finding fault and speaking bad, or free from envy. Is usually asuya is envy, but literally means to speak ill. Anasuya, to be free from that envious. Here it's like you should be free from envy and you have to have faith. So what it really means is you have to have faith in what I'm saying. And faith, I think, here should just be defined as enough interest in this hypothesis that you do it and you try it out and do the experiment. Not some kind of blind faith that you operate with. Krishna's been trying to make logical arguments all along, and at some point you have to be willing to just try it. Try something new. Not just leap in blind, not blind faith. But at some point you've made a logical enough argument for somebody, and there's no way you can overcome their lack of enthusiasm, lack of willingness to try something new. There's a responsibility we have in the equation that when a good argument is presented, when good logic is given, when good reason is presented, we then have a responsibility to step up and make a move. And so I think Shraddha in this sense can be understood like that very easily. And it doesn't become this sort of blind thing, you have faith and you don't. It's not like Krishna's just given decrees. He's made a number of really nice structured arguments that are very easy to follow, that make really good sense. And now if you're going to be filled with faith or inspiration to shake off that lethargy and fight, then what's the opposite? You're going to be free from kind of like an unnecessary, doubtful, mistrusting, critical, insulting mentality, which then paralyzes you. You follow? So Shradanvata Anusuyanta. Muchante tepi karma bi. And the people who can do this, follow this teaching, they become liberated. They become released from, they become liberated from karma. Muchante, they are released from karma bi, from karma.
Can I ask something about the translation?
Yeah.
Because he says here, according to my injunctions, and who follow this teaching, when he's saying without envy, is he saying in a general sense, or also, or to without envy to me, to my injunctions, to my person, or just in general to any living entity?
I mean, we just did the literal Sanskrit, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So those persons, manava, ye, who execute their duties, anutishtanti, who do their duties, according to my injunction, idam me matam, my opinion. But of course, if you are God, your opinion then becomes reality. You got it. There you go. That's how you get the injunction from matam. And who follow the teaching faithfully. So now it's about teaching, following the teaching faithfully. Idam matam, this teaching, this opinion, and you're following it shraddhanvata, with faith, without envy. Now, if you're going to relate following the teaching with faith and without envy, the envy would then most logically be towards the teaching. Yeah, you get it? If you're going to follow the teaching with faith, you're having faith in the teaching. And if you're without envy, you're going to be without envy of the teaching, or without an envy here, because generally speaking, you don't feel envious of a thing. You only feel envious of a person. Therefore, I took the time to give you guys a literal translation of envy, because the word envy in English is not a perfect translation for this. Because if you're not envious of the teaching, who's envious of the teaching? You follow? Now you can. Asuya means criticizing. It literally means speaking ill. So if can you speak ill of a teaching? Yes. So now this asuya most literally would be towards the teaching. However, if Madan teaches us a jujitsu technique, and I follow the teaching faithfully, and you criticize the teaching, ultimately you're criticizing the person who gave the teaching as well as the teaching. Because if a teaching is being given by somebody, if an opinion is being given by somebody, if an idea is being given by somebody, and you critique that idea, it's not a big jump that you're actually critiquing also the person who gave the idea as well. So you could extend the fault-finding critical mentality to somebody not having faith in Krishna's words. Sure you could. No problem.
It could be like someone being cynical or not submissive.
The word cynical is a perfect synonym in this context for asuya. Cynical, blindly doubtful, hypercritical. You follow? Unnecessarily questioning somebody, just kind of like ad infinitum, argumentum ad infinitum. You know, just like an unlimited argument, just for argument's sake. Doubting for doubt's sake, without any desire to clear your doubts or move forward. You follow? By extension, it could also be that you don't respect Krishna, therefore you don't listen to his teachings. And that would also work. So that interpretation isn't wrong, but the most primary meaning of it would be being critical of the teaching, which then by extension is critical of the person who made the teaching. Did you follow that? Those persons who execute their duties according to my injunctions and who follow the teaching faithfully without envy become free from the bondage for their activities. Okay, good. And then what happens usually in Vedic literatures is very, very common. It's quite formulaic. You'll say the positive. If you do this, you'll be free from karma. And if you don't do this, this will happen. And in fact, that's what Krishna does here. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings, do not follow them regularly, are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. Vidhi nashtam achetasa. Know them to be lost. Know them to be without intelligence. Sarva jnana vimudhangstam. All their knowledge is bewildered. Na anutishati mematam. Because they don't follow this teaching. Why not? Etat abhya suyanta. Out of envy. Out of this cynicism. They don't try it. At some point, like, how do you know how to swim? At some point, you have to get in the water. At some point. How do you teach someone how to drive? At some point, you got to get behind the wheel. How do you teach someone how to wrestle? At some point, you got to lock up and start to feel somebody's weight. You can't just do it all in the classroom. You can't get a black belt in the classroom. You have to get on the mat. And this, of course, is a critique in some ways of those who are merely jnanis, merely Sankhyas, just merely studying without actually doing. And you have to study and then apply that teaching in your life. There's a cognitive factor and there's a behavioral factor. One of the major critiques of psychoanalytic theory is that they just do cognitive therapy. But it should be cognitive behavioral therapy took over the world as the model. There was a cognitive behavior, it was all the rage around the turn of the century, up until about 1950. Then Skinner came in with strong behaviorism, and behaviorism became the norm. And in the 60s, you ended up with sort of the humanism and kind of the standard model of cognitive behavioral therapy that's used even to this day, where you try to attack the way someone looks at the world and also take a look at their activities and try to modify their activities. And that model where you try to adjust someone's behavior and adjust the way they think about the world, that's the model that has the most success. That's all therapy that you'll go to nowadays. You go see a therapist, this is the kind of therapy you're going to get. Cognitive behavioral therapy. And so you see here Krishna giving a teaching and then telling you have to apply that teaching in your own life. And telling you, get up and try it. Like a hypothesis. At some point the hypothesis is good enough. You get in the laboratory and you test it. And the laboratory is our own life. And we apply the teachings in our life and see how they work. So now Krishna's been making this point that, don't just be lethargic and not move and be feverish and not move. You got to do something. Try and do what I'm telling you. See if you can connect this last verse to the next one. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? Let's read it again. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he's acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? How does that verse flow from the last verse? Let me read it again. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? How does that verse flow from the last verse? Yeah.
In the last verse, you described how it's sort of natural for a human to envy another human, or if they criticize the teaching, you criticize that individual. So it's sort of in our nature. For some men, cynicism is in their nature. So then, what that means is, instead of repressing the cynicism, they have to understand why they have to actually understand why the cynicism is wrong, or to defeat it. They can't just say, "Well, it's bad, so I can't be cynical."
You're smart. And you're really trying to understand the text. And I appreciate that. I don't think that your answer is wrong or bad. I think there's an even better answer, but you're right on the right track. And so I appreciate very much how clearly you spoke, how articulate you were, and how you were really trying to understand the text. It speaks volumes. And it means you're going to be able to understand these texts really easily in a very short period of time. Who else sees a connection? Yes.
So your nature kind of determines what your duty is going to be, and if you try to suppress your nature and not do your duty, then you're not really going to get where you're trying to get.
Okay, you're even closer. You got one major point. The point that if we've decided we're going to do our duty, the next question is, what is our duty? What duty should I have? And now Krishna is saying to Arjuna, he's saying, hey, you have a nature, you should act according to your nature. For instance, let's say you are incredibly cerebral, but then you get a job where you're working with your hands all day, like digging ditches or whatever. You're going to be miserable. You're going to be doing a job which is not made for your nature. because you're naturally a very cerebral person. Doing research, I mean, there are some people in the world who can read for 8 or 10 hours a day, can study for 8 or 10 hours a day. How many of you can study for 8 or 10 hours a day with no problem and be happy? I can. I love studying. I study for 12 hours a day, no problem. How many of you, if you study all day, you would just feel like, I want to poke my eyes out, you have to get out and do something? Raise your hand. Okay? None of you should be professors. None of you should be professors. You should study, you should become learned, but you shouldn't get a job where you study professionally. You follow? Just like somebody who was born quadriplegic shouldn't try to get a job on the Olympic team for running. Maybe they can go to the Special Olympics, or maybe they call it the Paralympics now. I don't know what they call it now. But they're not going to win the Boston Marathon. And so you got to look at your body, look at your mind, and figure out how you can do something of value in this world. And we all have some talents. We all have some natural inclinations, and discovering what those are and acting in accordance with those is going to enable you to have the best path at surgically interfacing with this world in a way which isn't incredibly frustrating. You got that one right. You missed another one. I'd say the one you missed was even bigger, but that was a pretty good one. It's solid. It's borne out by the later texts. You're going to see in one verse that you were right. But there's another element. Can anybody see another element that connects the last verse to this one? Yeah. Yeah.
With the perfect passion and lethargy, like when you're lethargic, you're repressing that inner nature that will drive you towards knowledge.
I mean, that's, just like the guy here, you're doing a good job of really interpreting the verse. You're saying, if I followed you correctly, what's your name again? Vladimir. You like Vlad?
Yeah.
Okay. Vlad, if I've understood you correctly, what you're saying is this, is that the verse was talking about not being lethargic. So now you got to get up and do your duty. And so one thing that might help you do your duty is to act according to your nature, and that might help to empower you to not get stuck in that lethargy and to move forward, right? It's a very, very, it's a piggyback on what he said. It fits together like a hand in glove and actually extends what he said. So it's not just merely repetitive, but you've extended what he said. And you've linked it back to the text, which is great. It's fantastic. I got another point that's even more basic. I'm not going to... Somebody think they got it? Does somebody think they got it? Yeah? What is it?
Well, your nature defines your duty, and whatever your duty is already perfect. So if you decide you're going to try to experiment, you have this knowledge of what your nature is, but out of envy you try to go about it another way, maybe you try somebody else's nature, then you've ruined the whole experiment.
Yeah, I mean, that's. I think it's very much related to what he said, right? I think what you said is very much related to what he said. I think you said it in a clear way and you articulate, but I think what you said was very much almost synonymous with what he said. That you're going to do your duty, and therefore you should do a duty which comes naturally to you, and not be hateful or cynical about your own duty and want to do the duty of another person, right? Okay, it's something new. It's actually not merely repetitive. It's good. It's in the same family. I think this is the most basic way in which this text is related to the previous text. Listen carefully. Krishna has been telling Arjuna all along that he's got to do his duty. He said in the beginning of the chapter that you can't not do something. That's not even an option. That was an early teaching. I actually mentioned this when I was recapping. There's no way to even exist in this world without doing something. He's coming back to that teaching now. And he's saying this whole argument of like, you're not going to follow what I say. Ultimately, you're going to have to do something. There's no do what Krishna says or do nothing. It's either do what Krishna says or do something else. And you're going to be fighting against like what's in your best interest. But the option of not doing anything isn't on the table, and therefore this absolute renunciation that was at the beginning of your doubt at the beginning of the chapter, that you thought maybe not doing something was possible, I'm reminding you that that's not possible. Everybody has to do something. Everybody's either going to act like in accordance with like a higher vision of reality, or you're going to act like, for instance, if you're made to work, if you've got a body which is made to work, for instance, And you're made to be incredibly physical. You're either going to find a way to express your physicality in some kind of productive way and build your body and do something physical that makes you feel grounded, or you're going to become totally frustrated and angry and potentially even violent because you don't have any physical expression, and you're going to be like a powder keg waiting to go off. And so therefore, this idea, this myth that you can just do nothing is being attacked by Krishna. And he's saying, even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows nature which he's acquired from these three modes. What can repression accomplish? Kim karishati nigraha. Literally, kim means what? Karishati. What will it do? Nigraha, repression. What will it do to try to curb yourself down? Just do nothing. It doesn't work. So the most basic point that's being made here by Krishna, and I'm now making an argument, and I'm challenging the three great points you guys made. We call that one family of points. And the great point you made. The three of you together made a really cool point, and you made a totally separate point. I'm challenging it. I'm saying this is a more basic understanding of the verse. What will repression accomplish? Meaning you're going to act anyway. There's no getting out of it. So we're not asking whether you're going to act or not. We're asking whether you're going to act in a way which is congruent, which is fluid, which goes with the flow, which is also, now part of going with the flow is acting according to your own nature. But if the world was created by a creator, part of being in the flow would also be acting according to the divine nature of this world and being in the divine current when you act. And therefore, Krishna is saying, why are you going against me? Why do you want to fight this? Why do you not want to be a Kshatriya? Why do you not want to do your duty and fight in the battle? You were made to fight in a battle. You know, when Arjuna tried to pretend like he was a Brahmana and went incognito, people could recognize that he still had these huge, broad shoulders. And he had like a place where his bowstring had etched itself into his shoulder. And so there was like no way to mistake that he was a warrior. So he had a Brahmin thread on. Actually, the Kshatriyas even wore Brahmin threads. And he was dressed very simply like a Brahmana. But he was like a huge, buffed out warrior. It can't hide it. It's who he is. And so Krishna's saying to Arjuna, look, man, you're not going to be able to get out of doing this. You've got a nature. You're not going to be able to sit idly by and watch people die and watch women get raped and watch your friends get killed. It's not going to happen. You've got a nature. Your nature is to protect. You've got to act according to your nature. So this whole theoretical exercise that you think you might become a sannyasi overnight, a renunciate, and you might give up all your duties and go to the forest, it's preposterous. I'm saying this as the primary teacher. And my evidence for that is that he's all throughout the Gita, including in this chapter, made exactly this point. And he literally says, what will oppression accomplish? Meaning you're going to do it anyway. Why not get with the program and just do it for the right reasons? Otherwise, if you don't, it's like they have these dogs that they train to sniff drugs. And the dogs, their olfactory senses is hundreds of times more powerful than a human being's sense of smell. The sense of smell is a very primitive sense. It links to your amygdala, and it's not very developed in human beings. But amongst dogs, it's incredible. They can walk into a room and smell where you sat 2 days ago in the room. It's incredible what they can do. It's almost like they can see with their nose. It's like a paresthesia type thing. Is that what you get? Paresthesia, right? Where you have a sensual experience with one sense that should be with another sense. And so it's almost like they can see with their noses. It's incredible. That's why they walk around with their noses pointed. Their eyesight's actually very poor. Their hearing and their sense of smell is incredibly acute. So they have these dogs and they sniff drugs. But no one smuggles drugs anymore. No one tries to smuggle drugs through airport. That's like this thing's been out of vogue for 20, 30 years. It just doesn't work anymore. No one's coming in from Colombia with a bunch of cocaine in their suitcase or something like that. It just doesn't happen anymore. Everybody gets busted. So there's no longer a valid way of smuggling contraband. So you got these drug-sniffing dogs there, But they're never sniffing any drugs because no one's bringing drugs to the airports anymore. So every day or two, they put some drugs in a bag and roll it through the baggage carrier. You know, what do you call that? The carousel, thank you. They roll it through the carousel. So the dog can find it, and they give him like a Scooby snack, and they pat him on the back, and they say good job, and they like rub him and tell him good job. Because if the dogs are taught how to sniff drugs and they never get an opportunity to do so, they start to go a little loopy, and they start to get kind of crazy. And so to keep them motivated, on point, and frosty, they have to let them win sometimes. We have our nature. We're going to act. Arjuna will wind up getting in a squabble somewhere. If he doesn't fight in this good war, he'll end up kicking himself forever. You might as well just own it. That's just your duty. That's who you are. You do it for the right reason. Do it for a good cause. But you're going to end up in a scrum somewhere. That's just your nature. Now that might change over time. As you get old, your testosterone levels drop. Things do change. People become much more androgynous in their old age. But at least on some level, cerebrally, in terms of our skill sets, we have things. This is what vocational training is all about, and aptitude testing and things like that. And you got to figure out how to play your strengths, how to do something you're going to feel good about. So Krishna's just making the argument here. He's making a twofold argument. Give me one sec. I don't want to hear what you have to say. Krishna's making a twofold argument here. One is he's reminding Arjuna, hey, there's no option of not doing what you were put on this earth to do. There's no option of getting out of this. You might do it for the wrong reason later on and miss an opportunity. Let the world go to hell in a handbasket. But there's no getting out of this. You've got your duty. You're going to have to do it one way or the other. And it's going to be a lot easier on you to overcome that lethargy. It's going to be a lot easier on you to overcome your fault-finding nature. If you're doing something, it's going to be a lot easier on you to sustainably do your duty, to learn the lessons you have to learn in life if you're doing something which is not making you want to poke your eyes out. And so your point is also valid, but I would call it a secondary point that's actually an addendum to the primary point. And so the way it would frame out is, hey, everybody's got to do something. So let's just stop this academic conversation about not doing anything as if that's even possible. And at the same time, if you're going to have to do something, let's do something according to our nature. And so Krishna's bringing the conversation back to that point. Yes, sir. What's your name again? Mahesh.
Just a big understanding about nature too. So, seeing as our human scared to fight, not scared to kill, could you also kind of articulate that in a way of saying like killing is in our nature, but it's still a sin if you kill, as in murder, but killing on the battlefield was part of the true nature. So kind of like our promiscuity.
Sure.
But like appropriations.
Sure. I mean, you could just. I mean, you. This is a very good point you're bringing up. So, rape is bad, but sex isn't bad. Violence isn't bad. Wanton violence, violence for personal enjoyment, sadistic violence, violence for money, those are bad things. But we have a place for people who have a proclivity towards violence. They're peacekeepers. It's the military or it's the police force. In every society, there's a place for people who have that nature, where they can use that nature in a way which is, and I'll just to run with this a little bit because you're interested in this. I personally think that all police officers should be on testosterone, and I also think they should be paid to work out, and I think they should have a minimum weight they have to match up to, and they should look like bodybuilders, and they should also be trained extensively in hand-to-hand combat, specifically in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, wrestling, and boxing. Because if you are a weak, small, effete police officer, and you come up against a big, strong criminal, what are you gonna do to win? You're gonna pull out a gun. You're not gonna shoot him. You're gonna pull out a gun. That's how it works. Now, once you've pulled out a gun, what non-lethal options do you have left for ending the confrontation? Zero. Once you pull out a gun, because you're intimidated by the physical presence of the other person, your only option, if they don't comply, is to shoot them. You want your police officers really adept at non-lethal violence, because then they won't have to pull out their gun. You see it happens all the time. You got some big, tough-looking dude, and you got some weak police officer, and he gets all jittery. He breaks out his gun, and then he shoots him because the guy keeps coming towards him. What you want to see is you got some criminal, and the cop is just like there was, his name was Ronnie Coleman, was Mr. Olympia, I think 7 years in a row, if I'm not mistaken. He was a huge mountain of a man. He was a police officer. I believe it was in Houston. It was in Texas for sure. I believe it was in Houston. He was a police officer. He would show up at like a domestic violence call. He was so big it was like he probably couldn't even get out of the car. He would like come lumbering up, and just the criminals or the people who were creating problems, they would just like be like, okay, yeah, we'll come, like putting their arms behind their back. Like nobody wanted. They were just intimidated just by his presence. It was fun. They did like a TV show where people went around and they watched them with a camera, and nobody messed with them. It was just easy. That's what you want from your police force. So now we've got an example of there are ways to protect, and that's the proper use of violence to protect the weak and infirm. And we have a whole profession, many professions, the entire military profession. What to speak of private security, what to speak of the police force. There's actual profession, or a professional athlete. Because really, when you get into sports, sports is violence with rules. Sports is war in a game form.
I'm actually in one of those professions.
I'm sorry?
I'm actually in one of those professions.
So there you go. And so if that's your nature, then you get into that profession and it feels good and you're doing something productive. Just like sex isn't bad, rape is bad. And so we have these natures. We should find a way to piously and productively, in a way that contributes to society and our own well-being, act in accord with our nature. And we should be good at it. And we should encourage that. And if you encourage that, people are going to be better doing their duty, and there's going to be like less problem. They're going to be more effective at it, and the world's going to be a better place. And so just to bring this back, I had a bunch of other stuff. I wanted to finish the chapter today, but you guys killed me. But that's okay. It's all right. But I want you to bring your A game next week. But now, just to recap what we've done, Krishna starts off with that little nod to theism. Surrender everything to me. It's a little nod. It happens. Every chapter, Krishna will do a few theistic verses, and those foreshadowings will become very important later on in the Gita after Krishna's fully developed his teaching. Then he goes back and he says, listen, you should follow this process. If you do this, even though you're in the world, you're acting in the world, but you're going to become free from this world by living in this world in the proper way. By doing your duty in the right way, by following the advice I'm giving you, and acting in a detached way, doing your duty, you're gonna actually become spiritually evolved. Like you take a branch from a tree and it becomes the handle of an axe, and then that can cut down the tree if you fasten a proper blade to it. And so if you use your body in this world properly, you follow the direction I'm giving you, you'll experience it through the course of your life. You'll actually become more peaceful and more detached. But if you ignore this, you're going to end up doing something anyway. So let's just stop with that nonsensical conversation about whether or not to act. You're going to act. You follow? Now the question is just how you're going to act. And if you are going to act, why don't you act in accordance with your own nature? Stop trying to be a Brahmin when you're a Kshatriya. Accept who you are. Accept your lot in life. And find a way to do it in a beautiful way. Find a way to do it in an amazing way. Find a way to do it in a special way, in a unique way. And so that's what you guys said, piggybacking on the basic principle, which is that there is no sense to not doing your duty. And that's kind of the backbone. That's why I said, Kim nigraha, kim karishati. What will repression accomplish? Why try not to do your duty? Why try to just do nothing? which was a big subject in this whole chapter, and therefore we never want to stray too far away from the meaning of the chapter. We want to always try to link back to the earlier teachings so that we have a real full understanding. Did you guys follow that? Okay, thank you, IGTV. And now I want to get feedback specifically from the three of you. I want to open